All right, we should be live. I'm just gonna be waiting for the chat. I got my buddy Jason Hill hanging out with me. Jason, you want to say what's up?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
There you go. Mike is here as well to help moderate. And while
Hey.
we're waiting for the chat to kind of like get going, I want to say that Jason is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for quite a while, right? I think
Long time, dude.
Yeah, I think since we kind of both started our careers. It was around the same time. And yeah, I think that it's kind of crazy to see how me and you and many of our other friends are doing all this cool stuff these days.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always oh shoot, hold on. I'm always going online and I'm seeing I don't know, just people doing stuff for the Avengers movie, or doing something for some video game that just comes out. And one of those things was Apex Legends, right? And then I was like, oh dude, Jason worked on that. And such a trip, man. And so I want you to kind of give yourself a little bit of an introduction, because I know who you are. You're just some goober.
Goober.
But everybody else might not know how awesome you are. I just see you as a goober. That's kind of awesome.
I think that's more accurate to the truth, probably, though.
Yeah, but if you want to kind of give a little bit of a little bit of a rundown of what you're about, this is your time. While that's happening, I'm gonna be painting a thing.
All right. Yeah, I'm never too good at these bio things, but I'll
give you about 5 minutes.
Oh wow, is there a clock 24? Because that freaks me out.
I just realized my battery hasn't been charging, so I'm gonna be frantic right now. So just go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, a little bit about me. Yeah. So my name is Jason Hill, and I go by J Hill online, and I'm a game artist, a character artist for video games. That's kind of my profession, and I've been doing that for, maybe around 9 years or something close to that. But in general, I kind of consider myself like a CG artist or a modeler, and I've been doing that for a long time, pretty much since I was in high school. I think in high school is where I started 3D modeling.
Wait,
I wasn't
what?
Too good.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Boom, dude. See? Drop in knowledge. Yeah, no, I wasn't very good at school, and I was a troublemaker, and I was I don't know, just distracted all the time. And I got lucky that I ran into a teacher. I took this thing in high school called drafting. I don't know if you know what that is. It's technical drawing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's super technical drawing. And it's hard to stay still, but it was I could always focus when I was drawing or doing something super hyper focused. And my drafting teacher kind of took to me, and he tried to make me better. So he would call me out and move me into places, and I ended up taking that class 3 times, and each of them was progressive. So I didn't really know what drafting was when I signed up. It was an elective. I just knew it had something to do with drawing. And then by the time I was in the 3rd version, it was advanced. And he essentially let me just sit in the back on a computer and 3D model all day, which was dope.
That is cool, dope,
man. Yeah, and he also told me about. So this is funny. You probably don't know this either, dude. So he's also the person who told me about Art Center.
Sorry.
No, he told me about Art Center, and he said you should go there. You should try to go there because you can learn how to model, and then you can get a career for this. And I was like, really? I don't know. And he's like, yeah, you should do it. And I actually got something from the Art Institute in the mail, later. And I thought that was Art Center, dude.
Oh, no.
They
dude.
got you, dude.
Yeah.
Got him.
Yeah, dude, they got me, dude. I was like, Art Institute, dude, that's the one. And, and I went down there. And with my dad, drove me down there. We toured it, and they did a good job with those tours, man. They caught a lot of us in that net, dude. They got a lot of us, dude. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And then
they said they had a 97% chance of getting a job, but that included McDonald's.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big. Anyway, go ahead.
I took that tour too.
Yeah, you did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyways, I got caught up in a scholarship contest because that shit was expensive. Both my parents are teachers, actually, and eventually at one point my dad told me, because I didn't know what I was gonna do. Like I said, I wasn't very good at school, and I had really no passion for a career or a job. And my plan was to join the Navy and just go off and do the whole adventure thing and figure it out later. And I don't think my dad liked that idea at all. And one time we were out like shopping at Fry's Electronics, actually, just the two of us. And he goes, we saved up money. Like, I'm an only child. And he said, we've been putting money away, since you've been born. So you can just pick a school. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then later I told him, I was like, I want to go to art school. And he's like, all right. So we were on this tour at Art Institute. And that was a lot of money. At that time, I don't know what it was, maybe around 80,000 or something. So he was like, this is crazy. You got to really want to know that you want to go here for real. And I was like, yeah, okay. And we didn't qualify for any of the other kind of scholarship stuff. But there was this competition. I think you did a poster. So I did that. And I spent all this time and I was like, okay, I think I have a shot here. And then they invite you back to like this kind of finals. And so all the people that made it into the finals are there in attendance, and people are dressed up and stuff at AI too, which is crazy. And in retrospect, it's crazy. But I was like, oh my God, this is legit. And then and they call up the winner who gets like a scholarship, and then maybe the runner up gets half or something. And I was like, oh damn. And then they're like, to everyone else, you get a $300 scholarship. And I was like, oh. So I ended up going to AI for I don't know why that was an actual motivation, except for it was the only school I had made it that far into the information phase. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this. And also my passion growing up, or at least my like extreme interest, was visual effects.
Yeah.
And the Lord of the Rings like really blew my mind, and Golem like really blew my mind. So I wanted to make characters. I think I wanted to model characters, and I've wanted that before I went to college. And there was just something about the game industry at the time that I thought, I don't really recall, but I do feel like I played games a lot. I had a passion for them, and I thought maybe that would be the next, thing. Like,
Totally.
maybe I wouldn't be able to get to ILM, but maybe I'd be able to work on some game that ends up, being amazing in the future. Who knows? It seemed like the new frontier or something, so it was exciting, and that's what I ended up doing. And then that's where I met you and a bunch of dudes over. I think we had a really good class, man. Like you mentioned, I've thought of that too.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of us, we might have got lucky.
Yeah.
Like we might have it could have been a compounding effect too, like it just took a good amount of us to hang out with each other to just keep us motivated. That was good. That was good times. Definitely. Yeah, I always talk to Kaylin about this. I was like, we were doing some stuff, man. Like we would have the concept art club too. We would just like all hang out all of the time, and nobody else was doing that. And it was just funny because we were just kind of like, yeah, come hang out, like do the concept club. We're trying to work on it because luckily for you, at least there was 3 classes, but there's like no concept classes. There's only that one that they had, and it was like an elective, so it wasn't even like required. But most of the classes were like animation and like 3D stuff.
Oh wow, I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, the only like painting class was Tracy's, right? That was mandatory, but that was like a background layout.
Yeah, background layout. That was one of my favorite classes, just because of how he was a hard ass.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite teachers for the very same reasons. But that's my point. Like I would just sit in his classes. Because he was the only one that really knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And anyway, so like he was like Mike Tracy was very much like your teacher, but the difference was that I was paying to go to that school.
Yeah,
where you were just like hanging out, and this teacher was super nice. He was like, "Oh yeah, you should do this, man. You should definitely go to Art Center. You're like, Art Center, Art Center, Art Institute, Art Institute.
Artist. Hey, I got that's 50%. Same name. So
I mean, you got pretty damn close.
I got close, dude. It was in the same state, and it had half the name. So and it worked out. I've worked with people from Art Center, so we ended up in the same place.
Yeah, except
I mean, what's a name really?
Yeah.
Except they're like really, really good, and honestly, they actually spend way more money than we did.
Yeah, definitely. And their teachers are super hard asses too, I've heard.
Yeah,
like crazy, because it's like so prestigious now.
Yeah, man. But absolutely, like I think a lot of times people think it's always about just like going to the right school, like taking the right classes. But really, I think that it's more about just like having the right people around.
Absolutely.
Because although we went to really terrible school, ultimately, with like a handful
R.I.P.
of handful of good teachers,
Yeah.
It just was clearly a bad school, and we really lucked out by just being able to hang out with one another and just keep each other motivated. Yeah, to give you guys some perspective, like some of our other friends that are like working in the industry or doing some big things. Like one of the guys that used to hang out with you guys, like you and Dan, was Frank. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Like Frank was really hardcore. He worked pretty hard, and now he's over at Naughty Dog. He's the guy that designed, or not designed, but he sculpted Nathan Drake in the latest Uncharted, and probably all of the main characters in the next Last of Us. Right?
Yeah,
he's really good. And then we had like our buddy Oakley. Oakley worked on the latest God of War, designed pretty much all the creatures, I think, or at least all the big ones. And then we have from that same group, like Sean Evans, like he worked on Red Dead Redemption. You know what I mean? And so like it's just kind of cool. Like we get to see like, and then speaking of ILM, Kalen worked there for a bit.
Yep. Kalen worked there, and he went out to San Francisco, and like his whole life changed now. It's cool.
It's cool. And we went to GTC this year together, and it was cool. And like it's kind of a trip because when we were just hanging out, we were just like running into all these people. And we're like, I mean,
there's people. Mark Abadir is at Blizzard.
Oh yeah.
Kevin Jones is at Riot.
That's right. That's right.
All of the top 5 companies, like we got representation.
Yeah, from that AI crew, that garbage AI like had nothing to do with it. It just put us in the same room.
We paid a lot of money to meet each other. Which, hey, I've actually gone back and forth on that. I mean, I know you speak on it a lot, but
no, it should have been cheaper.
It should have been cheaper, but I don't regret it. That's my conflict. I feel like it was an extremely important part, but at the same time, it was a ripoff. But I would do it again, So
I think you're right. And so my perspective on it is, whenever people ask like, what would you do differently? There's almost little to nothing that I'll change. Like it's like pretty much I would go through the same bullshit too, for the very same reasons you just made it. Like it's because of the things that happen. It's because of like that feeling of like, oh man, we got gypped. But then like that hardened our resolve, right?
Yeah.
The fact that it didn't have all the resources, so we had to learn to be resourceful, Yeah.
Like
a lot of that, because like maybe it would have been different if we were spoon fed how to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think,
right?
I think ultimately the work that we ended up doing would have been different if we were taught some magical method, because there is no magical method anyway.
Yeah.
Like when you go to school, I don't know what you think when you're young. A lot of people, I think when they think that, like, hey, where should I go to school? Especially modeling. I know it's the same with art in general, but modeling too, I think, because there's some technical aspects and you use different software there. If you don't think too much about it, I think a student's instinct is, what school do I go to that teaches me how to use the software that makes me make the models so I get paid the money? And I'm like, that's not how it works though. I mean, but that is how it would work in a lot of other professions.
Yeah.
But in this, it's still like the how and the what you make. It's not just learning, some skills that you can read from a book or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, being resourceful is like pretty much one of the staples of what I teach people in my courses.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I teach them that, I always like do the preface of like, you ask me a lot of these like really kind of broad questions. And you got to ask yourself, like, what did I do? Like, because if you ask me something like a very common question, for instance, will be like what brush do you use? Like you're talking about tools, right? So it's like, what brush do I use? That's such a broad question. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking like the kind of tool somebody uses, right? But I think that that is better. Like, I feel like I'm more responsive to that question when I know it's from like a contemporary who's like really skilled at something.
Oh yeah,
because they're not necessarily asking because they are they don't know how to be good, right?
Yeah, they're just genuinely curious, probably.
Yeah, like if you were to like do some like really cool cloth, right? And I'd be like, oh, dude, how did you do the cloth? Oh yeah, I'd use the whatever cloth simulation thing, right? Like that's fine, because you would probably trust that I would go out of my way to make sure that it's not just like I wouldn't be blindsided that the cloth simulation tool that you used isn't making things easy for me, right?
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of students, why a lot of instructors try to make sure students pay attention to why they would ask that question, is because sometimes people get misled to think that the tool is the thing that makes that artist.
Yeah.
And it's like I usually try to determine like where that person's at, but I usually with my students I have the context of looking at their work, then knowing very much that they're asking the wrong question. And so like I think it's all about like how to get better, like what are the principal things that you should work on. And speaking of which, there was one thing that you talked about in your latest YouTube video that I really liked, and you were just talking about like when you're sculpting, and I never thought about this, but you were sculpting and you're talking about like how like some of your forms were muddy, right? And I was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because I was thinking in my mind like that's a term that I only see in painting, right? But then when you said it, I was just like, oh yeah, like lumpy forms, right? That's like that's the equivalent to like a muddy painting. It's like basically the same principles. Like you gotta like sharpen those primary forms instead of the secondary and tertiary, right? And I thought that was dope, man. And like I don't know, like how did you come to find out like what were the tools that you used to become better at like those primary problems, those fundamental things? Like when did you have that epiphany where you're like, oh shoot, I definitely need to learn how to like construct real anatomy? You know?
You know, honestly, that's a tough question again. I love talking about this stuff, but I just feel like art, like your craft and what you do is a continual growth. So I don't feel like I'm at a stationary point right now. And I think the most personal growth, especially for fundamentals, which is what I also tell students is the most important thing. I think fundamentals comes from practice, like from doing. Like, you know, when you say practice too, it might freak people out, like you're doing piano lessons or whatever. But I just mean like the act of doing. Like the act of doing it is where you get comfortable with fundamentals. You can't learn. You can't read it. You know what I mean? It's different than
No,
than
I know
other
exactly what
skills.
you mean. No, I know exactly what you mean. Like it's similar to like I can tell you how to. I always say this. Like you can do. I could tell you that if you do like 100 push-ups, that you're gonna get stronger at doing push-ups. But just me telling you doesn't mean that now you're good at push-ups. Like you have to eventually, inevitably, do push-ups, right?
Yeah. And I think and you could think of one person who wants to be as analytical as possible, and another person who just is like, all right, I'm gonna start doing push-ups. And while that guy just jumps on the ground and starts like fucking around and trying to push his body up and down, the other one's like, okay, so how far apart would you say your hands are? And like, do you put a lot of weight on your palm? Or like, what about your fingertips? And like, what happens when you get tired? And meanwhile, the other guy's just grinding it out. And I do that a lot. I grind a lot out.
Totally.
There's a lot of things that I do that aren't the latest and greatest techniques. So I do try to, you know, learn new techniques at home in my free time and try to, you know, do a subject matter that I'm into and just use that opportunity to like, hey, I'll try out a new thing. Right.
Yeah,
I don't want to be too old school, but a lot of the time, anytime I need to model something or make something, I'll generally know at least one way to do it. And if I don't know a clever trick, like I've gotten used to it over time where I'll just suck it up and grind. Like I'll just do something that takes me hours and hours. Like I also just got kind of numb to it because making actual full-fledged game characters takes a long freaking time, you know, like hundreds of hours you're working on the same thing. So sometimes I just think, you know, can I get this done? Like if I just put an album on and I focus, like, will it be done in 30 minutes? Will it be done in an hour? If so, I'll just do that instead of like Googling how to do some clever thing or whatever. So I don't know how I went down that tangent, but essentially, yeah, just do it, man. Just do it.
You know, I think you and Dan, our good buddy Dan, are.
I work with him now. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. I think you and Dan are like the greatest example. I said the stream. Oh, it's reconnected. Okay, so it might have just been a slight problem, bro.
You're the problem.
Look in the mirror, bro. Look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror. And you're also the solution. I'm not being dark. I'm saying.
No, You're only the problem, dude.
Yeah.
There's no solution. There's
Get
nothing
out of
you
your
can do.
own way, man.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, man. No, like no, you're right. And so the point I usually try to make is that like that even if you're doing it wrong, you know, which arguably like maybe there's better ways to do the very thing that you're talking about, right? But inevitably, if you're still just doing it, like just going like hardcore, just putting that time in, you know, like going back to that push-up analogy, and you're talking about like the one person who's like really thinking about like how hard, like how far their hands need to be, like where's my spine going to be, all that stuff. Even if the other person is, let's say, doing it not the best form, right, or not doing it like the most effective way, they will still get stronger.
Absolutely.
You know, they will still have a stronger chest than the person who's still thinking about it, you know?
Yep.
And what ends up happening is it's exponential from there, actually, because then that person, like somebody that's better than them at said thing, right? So, oh yeah, you're definitely like, you know, overcorrecting in your spine. You should try this. And so that person's like, oh, okay, I'll start doing that now, you know? And they are already building on a strong foundation of skill, right? So then they'll just change their form. Now they're getting even better, even faster, right? And while the other person's still like are fear of flight, right? They're still afraid of like, what's the first step? I don't want to make the wrong step.
That's it. Yeah.
When ultimately you're gonna mess up and screw up anyway. There's no way the first painting or first thing that, or first sculpt or first whatever thing you're gonna do is gonna be good. It's almost always gonna be terrible. But like as you get better and better and better, like the more you do it, the better you get at something. You know.
Yep.
Like I started getting to like 3D sculpting just from after your video. I was like, oh, damn, I want to get back into it. And then like I already like ran into like several things that I was like, oh man, I could have done that better. You know. And it's because I did it. You know, it's because I put my hands in the water. I was trying to catch that fish, and I caught like a snake biting my finger, and I realized I was in the wrong part of the lake.
The analogies are strong, dude.
Dude, so strong. And the snakes that bit off my finger, but now I know like that part is like. You know what it is? Is because my kids were watching that. What's that guy? That Survivor guy, Bear or something?
Oh yeah, Bear, the Netflix thing.
Yeah, and there's like a pick your own adventure, like survival.
Yeah. Oh, that's out.
Yeah, that's out.
They're watching it, and I was just laughing because like it's like what
should I eat this snake?
Yeah, no, there's like a wolf, like he's in like a wolf's den, and it's like he's like, should I go in or should I run? And then like the kids are like, go in. Yeah, and then like a wolf shows up, and then they're just like, "Oh, I've got to run," but it's like there's no wolf there, dude.
Dude, that's gonna be so staged, man.
It has to be like as he's running it, like the cameraman is like chasing the
it turns around wolf. And like
looking at the wolf
over as like a movie set. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, the wolf runs past like the camera. Like clearly the wolf's like an actor. You know, no, it's definitely a real. Yeah, it's a real wolf. It's just like it's like a trained like dog, like a trained wolf. You know,
it's just a husky, but they
I think so. I don't. It might not have even been a wolf, man. I might have been tricked. And then like he like jumps onto like the helicopter, and like the wolf's like barking at him as if like, oh, you nearly I nearly got you. And I was like, you never were gonna get him, dude. This is fake news, dude. But anyway, yeah. So like as I was doing it, I learned the hard way kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that's valuable. That's valuable lesson to be learned. And I think a lot of times, again, people are afraid to just get that like first punch in, because if they don't do it right, you know,
the first time,
they think that they're a complete failure. I think it's a cultural thing, right? Like society.
I have that too, but I still have that, and it's not just the first attempt. Like I think I just have a fear of failure or not knowing what to do, and I think it's comparable to the white piece of paper. Like even the best writer can be freaked out by that, and I think just my method has become to just jump in and fail fast and then fix it. Like I just tweak and fix. And I think that's kind of what's honed over time, is that I can notice mistakes, or, you know, I can follow my intuition in certain areas of like, this isn't feeling right, and then don't give up. So as long as I'm willing to grind, as long as it takes till I'm happy, then that's just kind of my method. I just jump in and I flail around and I think, this sucks. And eventually I don't give up until it sucks less. And I think, okay, I guess I did it. It's just not as linear as we kind of hope. So I've just gotten used to jumping in without knowing what's going to happen. And because I did enough things where I realized, oh, I feel this way every time, and I never know what I'm doing, and I have to learn, how to solve. And that's the thing is, every time I make something, it's different. So
totally.
some skills I can carry over, like again, those fundamentals. I think if you did 5 or 6 different subject matters, what rises to the top would be fundamentals, the thing that links those things. But it's just the nature of making characters is that, they're going to be different in almost every aspect than the other character that you did.
Yeah, like this linear thing you're talking about, like totally most people, because it's not so obvious like how they're improving or what they're improving on. Yeah, it feels stressful, man. Totally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think like for me, one of the things that I've done is to just like build systems, and these systems just kind of prevent me from feeling like crap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I do these like kind of little like thought experiments where I just talk to myself in this context of like, okay, so I'm modeling this character, right? And it's kind of hard. And then I go through this like laundry list of thought experiments. Then one of the first thought experiments I give myself is, well, how many characters have you taken to finish? Like 3D models have you done, like truly at this level? Oh, like none? Okay, yeah, you should be all right, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, like would you go and just challenge like the greatest fencer if you've never went fencing before? It's like, no, of course not. But it's like in the context of that painting or that model rather, it's like you're in it, and so you feel all that anguish. And in fact, it's like the same problem that I tell students. Like, I actually saw this video today that talked about it. Like, they have a name for it. It's called the IKEA Effect, I think. And it's essentially like when you build your own furniture, like it gives you more of this value of it. Like there's more value in it. So this problem of like, so this is the opposite effect. This is where like, we were talking about like how you feel like, oh man, this is really tough, versus man, this is dope. And that's the IKEA effect. IKEA effect makes you feel like that furniture is
like
better.
You're better than you are.
Yeah, that furniture is better because you constructed it, right? And I actually tell people like, be careful of that, because that's just as dangerous. Because and this is a good example of this, is like where you do a painting that you felt like, oh man, I spent a lot of time on this and all this stuff. Or maybe you don't say that, but you have, right? You put a good amount of effort into this thing. You put it out there, and then nobody really cares, right? And you're like, what's going on? Why does anyone like my artwork, right? And then you do just kind of like this loose sketch, this kind of like half-assed thingy, and you put that out there, and everyone's like, oh, this is genius, bro. Like, you got to do more of that. And I'm like, what? I just barely did that,
Yeah.
But that's the IKEA effect in play, is that you will unconsciously give things more value because of the effort, because of the labor that went into it, and vice versa. Because when people put a lot of time into something and they feel like it's still kind of garbage, I always say, no, it's not just always about making winners. It's also about knowing when the losers come and what you can do about them, like what to improve
learning
next
from
time.
them.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I get this whole linear problem. It really doesn't feel linear, but the reality is it absolutely is linear, because you do stuff, you get better at it. That's just how it works. But it just doesn't feel that way, because we're just a bunch of apes.
Yeah.
And we're really primal, right? We can't like take a step back and look at it in the grander picture, It's just really hard to do that. And
No, definitely, because of what you just referenced and our perception of time, given like the physical beings that we are. But I would add a bit of a correction on what you're saying, just to illustrate the point.
Dare you correct me, dude?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna correct. Yeah, because you're so fucking wrong, dude. It's great. No, I'm just kidding. No, but what you said about growth being linear is true. But I think a good analogy that some people, I did this before when I lost weight like years ago. I tracked my weight, to see what was going on. And if you do that every day consistently, you'll see oh, I'm down a pound, I'm down 2 pounds. But then on Saturday, you're up 3 pounds, blah, 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 right? So if you plotted it every day, it would look like a wild EKG, but it climbs up. And if you zoom out enough and you draw a line, it looks straight. Yeah,
then you see the linear thing, yeah.
But because we perceive it day to day, or in this case, project to project, it's hard for us to recall everything.
No, you're right. That is a good correction.
I even feel now.
I'll allow
thank
it.
you. Yeah, you're welcome. No, but I even feel now that it's hard for me to gauge, like when I'm at the end of a project, I think, oh, okay, the next one. I'm already thinking towards the next one, and that because I can see the things that I want to do better. And even though I guess that's kind of an accurate representation of like weighing yourself essentially,
Yes.
but I always feel like your mind's a little bit ahead because it's
Well, like we have like the advantage and disadvantage of having every other great artist out there to compare ourselves to
that's true.
every
That's
5
true.
seconds. So it's like it's one thing when you're just comparing yourself amongst your peers. It's another thing when you're comparing yourself against like
Like the world.
the Usain
Yeah.
Bolt of artists, and you're just like, oh
Yeah.
boy, I thought I was doing some good work here. But I always like tell people that you should do that anyway because that's quality control. That's a reminder of the stakes, right? Because if you're only looking at like your small location, you're putting blinders on for no reason. But I at the same time, I do think that it is reasonable to have like little milestones to that larger like goal, right? To keep yourself sane. Yeah, because if you're always comparing yourself to the greatest, it could get really demoralizing really fast.
Absolutely.
But if you know that they exist and you check in on them every like month or so, I think that's much healthier.
Yeah, me too.
Right? Instead of just like looking at them every time you do a sketch, right? But like every time you're trying to do like a real finished image, you should then compare and contrast. That's the greatest way to critique yourself because sometimes you can't have a person just give you a solid critique, and you need critiques, man. Critiques are so valuable.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. So, go ahead.
yeah, so basically, you need somebody to be able to critique you, and that's a great way to do it indirectly, because obviously that person isn't in your room is like, oh my gosh, you're garbage. But if you put your work next to one of your favorite artists, and you're like, oh man, I can totally see it, and really sit there and be honest about like, okay, maybe my anatomy could be better. Like, oh, dude, their forms are super good. Like for instance, that was one of the things. So I'll tell you a little bit of what I found out. Like I realized that like if you can just really nail those forms, man. You can get away with a lot, man. Like the details, even like the details really don't just like a painting.
Rate doesn't matter.
Just like in a painting, yeah. And I'm just like, duh, why am I so dumb, dude? And then, but like, it's just like it's what happens when you get like into something for the first time. You just tend to just fall into these bad habits or these bad kind of like systems. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, and it was only after I saw this guy's work that I was just kind of like. Because I was looking at it, and they were really impressive, and there's like very little to no real like tertiary texture to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just all just solid overlapping of forms. Everything was just perfectly aligned and really constructed well, and I was just like, oh boy.
Yeah, you can really tell when someone sculpts with a real understanding of forms, and you're like, oh damn, all right, yeah. You don't even need pores and stuff. It's kind of an opposite effect of what's happening at the lower levels right now because rendering and high frequency detail maps have never been more accessible than they are. So lots of people that have only been doing art for a shorter amount of time can get like macro shots, or I don't know if that's the right word, macro, or like super microscopic shots of textures.
Well, it is it is macro, but it's like micro detail. It's kind of weird. I get the problem there.
Yeah, macro is the lens.
Yeah, macro is the lens, but it's like micro detail.
Yeah,
they're like getting into like the actual pores and the pores inside the pores, and you're
exactly.
Like,
yeah. So that's a lot. That's a lot more common now. But there are some old timers that I still look at their work and I'm like, yeah, dang, like you can tell. And I think there's not a shortcut for strong sculpted forms. You know what I mean? That's how you can just tell. Like, oh damn, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what like if you look at like the Avengers coming out, right?
Yeah.
Like all their designs are super solid, man. Like almost all of the character designs for all the Marvel like cinematic universe is pretty good, and it's because they still got like a champion designer, team of designers there that understand those principles, and so all the costumes and all the outfits were like really good.
I would agree with you, except for Captain America in the first Avengers movie, man. They made a mistake.
I said most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they corrected it in the Winter Soldier, dude. The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, the actual. I didn't like the first Captain America movie, but that's my favorite costume of his. Oh my god,
really?
that costume is amazing. Yeah, the first one. Delicious. All the little stitches.
No, I like the Winter Soldier. That was probably my favorite Captain America movie in general.
Yeah, for sure. That was a really good movie.
That was good. That was solid. And then Winter Soldier looked dope. I remember when I was even thinking to myself, like, how are they gonna make Black Panther dope? And like, it's only just like a black leotard, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the costume for the movie, and I was like, oh yeah, that's how they're gonna do it. It looks so good, and I was just like, oh man. But
yeah, they're good with their textures. They're good with like the materials
lines,
that things are made out of in the lines. Yeah,
yeah, the lines, the shapes, all that stuff, and it's just like really solid, like forms in terms of like because even Ant-Man's costume is good. It's not like terrible, but it's just like they made it
kind of funny.
Yeah, they still like a character that you think would just be really silly. They still kind of made like a badass costume out of it. You know what I mean? Like there's still something like if you saw somebody cosplay it, you'd be like, oh, that's super cool. You know, that's really hard if they made like an Ant-Man.
Absolutely.
Suit, you know, that looked just like the one in the movie. It's not like something that you can just like slap on. You know, it's not like the Matrix, right? You just wear like a trench coat and some sunglasses.
Although that's genius, I think, because they took that and it's like if anyone wears a long leather jacket in all black and sunglasses, you immediately go, oh, Matrix. Like they just crushed they took that whole category of style.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we have some questions in the stream.
Yeah, you want me to grab some?
Well, there was a couple questions that we had on Facebook. I don't know if you want to like go check that out.
Sure, I can pull it up.
Yeah, because those people, there was a couple. I remember one though. So while you're doing that, one of them was about like how, what do you expect the industry is going to be like in 5 to 10 years, and what does that mean for a character artist, 3D character artist? I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, Jason?
So, I think in 5 to 10 years, there's going to be even more opportunity than there is now, and there's more opportunity now than there was when we went to school.
Yeah, totally.
And this comes from just the leisure time of the world is going up. Technology is getting more and more affordable. People realize games are big business, and the whole industry is kind of fractured and diversified in all these different spaces. And so with things like mobile and VR, techniques that we were doing 5 or 10 years ago are now viable again. And so you have this like kind of big landscape with a gradient of like of I don't know what you want to call it, technical cost or whatever, like specs and techniques. So I just think if you're open to, it depends too on what you want. Like sometimes I like just talking about art, but if you're talking about trying to get a job as a character artist, then I think, yeah, you're going to be in it's going to be a better situation for you. Probably also competition is higher than it's ever been. But if you're open to things like moving and open to projects like VR and mobile, and then you can get into this industry. And, let's not forget that some of the biggest successes in the game industry are on all kinds of platforms. Some of the biggest successes are mobile platforms too. So I think VR is going to be, excuse me. I think VR is going to be a thing that big companies keep dumping money into. Turtle Rock does games for VR and they've been crushing it. There's a lot of interest in it, and the specs on that are very low if you compare it to a console game or even the Switch. Like it's way low. So like just to give you some insight, I know there's been a project that I know because I've run into a lot of people that work on VR games now, but they've worked on projects where they don't have normal maps or spec maps or anything. Like it's just,
So you mean like to build these games, people are going like old school, low tech?
Yeah.
Right.
Because technically, like to make a real time game, like first of all, they're trying to put a thing where the whole device is on your face, right? So technology wise, we're kind of in the mobile realm. The definitely hardware is amazing on like the iPhone and these Samsung phones and stuff. The hardware is amazing. That's true. And it keeps getting better, but you have to make sure it doesn't overheat if it's going to be on your face and it's on all the time. And it has to render the image, not just 30 frames a second, like for it to not make you sick. And so 60, that you can, right? Yeah. And they have to render it. Yeah. It might be 90, dude. Yeah. And, okay. and there's a left eye and a right eye. So they have to render 2 at 90. So they're actually rendering at like what is that? 180?
Yeah.
That's insane. So to hit that frame rate on mobile hardware, you're pulling out all the old school tricks, dude. Like you're doing like, Quake 3 Arena.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think when I first got into VR, it was like it was very yeah, it was really hard because like you needed like a powerhouse machine. But I think people realize that they need to stop doing that. They need to stop making like console game experiences on VR headsets. And I think that's right. That makes sense. Hold on, so I'm gonna step out for 1 second. Give me one moment. I'll be right back.
Okay. I can kind of continue on that thought for a sec. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So the thing about like where the industry is going to be, yeah, if you're open to all different kinds of opportunities, I think there's going to be a lot for you. Like I say, though, competition's probably really high because people just know of
I'm
it.
back. Sorry.
What's up, dude?
My wife was just saying that there was a cool movie she wanted to watch. And I was like,
oh, what is it?
I don't know. She
Oh,
wanted
man.
me to watch it right now. I was like,
She's like, hey, you want to watch a movie? And you're like, I'm working, man. God, get out of here.
I saw like about 30 minutes or
You don't
so.
follow, you're like looking at you like, you don't follow my stream, dude?
What?
Click the bell, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
What do I gotta do?
Bell?
Click the bell.
Push notifications, babe. Like,
Well, she's
Yeah,
in the
I
same
mean-
room, so she could just, or she's like a room
Oh.
away, so she could just listen to me here. So
She's probably heard like her life's fill of your lectures, though, dude. To be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, you're right. Anyways, continue your thought. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying that, yeah, I think there's great opportunities to be a character artist if you're open. I think a common theme I see and something to be wary of is, and even I had to touch this, and it's cool because we know a guy who did this. But a lot of the times when you're a student, you're like, oh, I want to make Drake in Uncharted. And he did that, which is sick, but the odds aren't in your favor. So if you really want to be paid to make games, you just got to be open. Even when we were in college, we were all had to be, at least a lot of us were open to moving. I was open to moving, wherever it needed to be and working on whatever game needed to be. And I think now there's a lot more of those opportunities and you can grow and learn, some more skills on that job. And I think also technology is going to get better and better. So what VR looks like 10 years from now is hard to imagine, but like things like that iPad Pro that came out maybe last year is crazy, man. In terms of hardware, sick. And Apple has a game department. They have some great artists from all over working there on some top secret shit. They're huge into AR. So that's a huge platform that people kind of sleep on. So if you think of the mobile phones and iPads and Switches and computers and consoles, casino games, we worked on a casino game, remember? There's a lot of games, dude. There are a lot of games. So
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
just want to get paid to make 3D models that are like characters, then
There's
it's a
plenty of
good time.
opportunities.
Yeah,
there's plenty.
it's a good time.
There, like this whole there's a lot of competition argument is always been true for all sorts of
Yeah.
industries. In fact, it was true even for us. Obviously, it was not nearly as crazy as it is now, but it's gonna get even crazier in the future in terms of how many people. But as a consequence of more people knowing that they can be character concept artists, there's more people who know that they can make video games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or short films.
Yeah.
So you might not like be able to work for like the biggest and baddest, but you might be able to work for a company that starts out and they may
Exactly.
eventually become the biggest and baddest, right? I remember like this isn't the best example, but like it's like we have our friend who got like an opportunity to because me and Jason and a couple of our other buddies that we went to school with, we get together, we go to this really cool place in Long Beach and we just hang out and just talk about stuff we hate and love and just debate as we drink whiskey. And it really reminds me of like just how it was when we used to go to school. But he was talking about this time where he got like this job opportunity over at Epic, and they're like, "Yeah, we're doing like this new game. It's got like stylistic characters in it." And he's like, "What? I don't know if I want to work on that, dude." And he was kind of like, "All right, well, I'll do the test and see what's up." And he did well. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, man, this is gonna work out." And as that was happening, he like I guess he was doing another one with Naughty Dog. But at this time, like Naughty Dog is like really like they're
It's
killing
prestigious. It's
Yeah,
prestigious.
Yeah,
It still is.
everybody wants to get up on that, and so then they're like, "Hey, you did a great job. Do you want to work over here?" And he was like, "Yep, gonna take that." And they were just the guys over at Epic were like, "Oh man," years later, like Fortnite Battle Royale comes out,
Mm.
and he sees all that like that Fortnite money, and he's just like, oh man.
That's why he needs to drink all that whiskey now, dude.
Yeah. And but it's like it's to Jason's point of like you never know, right? And you just
No, you
kinda,
never
like,
know.
yeah, you just kind of want to like just work wherever you can, and then and do job that you can. What I will say though, I'll make a correction.
Oh, okay.
Oh, dang,
Counter
double,
corrections.
Touche.
double correction. Yeah, you shouldn't just work wherever. It should still be relative to what you wanted to do. Like, so for instance, Jason always wanted to do characters, but what he says, and I agree with, is that it didn't really matter where he was doing characters, especially when he first started. He just wanted to kind of keep doing that. And because he did that, he kept on doing characters, and he kept on getting better at it. And because he kept on doing it and getting better at it, he got better opportunities. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
What I try to tell people to be wary of is just to get a job. That's different.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
100%.
if you get a job, let's say as a graphic designer, then just like Jason got really good at characters because that's what he was doing all the time, you're going to keep getting good at graphic design. And you're going to realize ultimately that you are not spending time doing the other thing. Let's say it was characters or concept art. You're getting really good at graphic design, which is the complete opposite of what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And your portfolio is nothing but graphic design. And you just keep getting more jobs being a graphic designer. And you're like, why is this happening? It's because you keep practicing that trade, you know? A good friend of mine worked at Blizzard, and he wanted to switch over to concept, right? But he first got in the doors as a modeler, because that's what, you know, the school that we went to told him he needed to do, right? And so he did that, and he got a job, and it worked out. He was like, oh, see, they're right. But he was thinking, well, I'm just going to work my way up, though, you know, in terms of like, I'm going to work my way up to be a concept artist. And he did work his way up, but not as a concept artist, as a 3D character modeler, then to like a senior, to then a lead, to then pretty much just being like the supervisor of like the whole character art team. And at this point, he's thinking like, okay, now I'm going to like switch over, you know, like I've done my time. Maybe let me be a concept artist. And they're like, nah, dude, you can't. And he's like, what? Like, come on, guys. Like, I've been working here for so many years, doing all this stuff, great work, you know, shipped all these titles. And they're just like, yeah, that's the point. Like, you're the lead, you're like the supervisor, bro. You're the best amongst us. So what you're asking me to do is basically say, take a job as a concept artist because you're only mediocre. You know, you're a mediocre concept artist. So we would hire a mediocre concept artist and lose our like senior, like 10-year freaking modeler. Like, nah, you know, not gonna work out. And so then he realized, like, because that was when he heard that, he was like, oh my gosh, that's like, that makes perfect sense, you know, because he wasn't practicing concept nearly as much as he needed to, you know, because he was just getting only work on 3D stuff, and he had life. And on his off time, that's what he focused on, was just life stuff, you know? So then he changed gears, and he worked really hard on his concept stuff. He worked really hard on that stuff. And then he kind of pretty much found his replacements, you know? Trained them, got them in there, and then when he asked, it was much easier, right, at that point. But that's kind of the thing. And this took him like years, almost a decade, I think, to eventually just make that switch, you know?
Yeah.
Because the problem that he ran into was he was thinking of it as a, you know, a vertical climb, but it was actually a lateral thing that he needed to do. He needed to move to the side, right?
Yeah.
He was going up a ladder that only took him to a different like path that made him a better modeler, not a better concept artist. It doesn't work that way. It's not like if you worked somewhere for so long, it would be like if like Ed Catmull from Pixar, who's like one of the great programmers and like behind the scene like technicians, decided to just be an animator, you know, or like a storyboard artist, right? Like, or like if you took someone like Brad Bird, you know, who's one of the great directors and animators there, and made him like a shader texture like modeler, you know, whatever, like, or a texture artist or a technical artist, you know, he like builds shaders now. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? It's like a completely different discipline. It doesn't matter if he has that legacy at the studio. He's not like Brad Bird is not a technician, you know, he just isn't. Even if that was his dream, like I've been doing this animation stuff so I can build shaders, you know.
Yeah, that's his dream. Yeah.
Yeah, but and that's what I try to tell people. Like, it's not just about getting a job, right? It's about doing the job that you want.
Yeah.
And then from there, yeah, I absolutely agree with Jason. Like, you should just try to get in wherever you can, you know?
As long as it's that job, I agree. Another big common trap is the QA thing. I try to advise people to not do that too. Like, no offense to QA. I met some dope QA people and they seem happy with what they're doing. So I think that's where you want to be. But if your plan is to like get a job in QA, it's not impossible, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's a very low percentage. Essentially, you have to do what you just said, where you would get a job in QA because they're hiring, so you can meet people and like, you know, try to go and hang out and just, you know, make relationships. And then at home, you were getting dope, so that eventually, you know, you can use your edge. But you still have to get good. I mean, you're not going to learn on the job. That's kind of another common mistake. I think people kind of hope that.
It's a job.
Yeah, it's a job. Like they want to hire someone that could do the job right now.
Yeah, it's like if you were, let's take some other kind of job. It's like if you were a waitress or a waiter and you wanted to be a chef. If you're not in the kitchen, you're not going to learn how to be a chef. You know? If you're not at home, like learning how to be a chef, you're not going to be a chef. It doesn't matter if you work at the restaurant. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it'll help, like that you know the chefs and you're friends with them, but they're not going to just give you a job as a chef just because you're your friend. You know?
Exactly.
And so I think it's really important to just like, exactly focus on the things that you want to do, and to make that your primary goal. And then it might take you longer. You know, that's just kind of the way of the beast, you know? But that's kind of the point too, is most people that can't wait tend to fall into these traps, like these I want to just get in there and then I'll figure it out. And then it's like, they're like, oh man, I should have just waited. You know? So anyway, we'll move on. What's another question that was on the Facebook? Did you find another one?
There's one that I'm not sure is a question, but I'll read it just to be safe. Doug Brown, it said, self-reflection. Why do I always hone in on the mature content?
Yeah, I don't know.
Nice word.
Maybe he's just saying maybe he's just saying he just likes looking at mature content.
Oh, I think he was actually, it was a joke. He was referencing my portfolio you linked. One of my things has a mature, like on ArtStation.
Oh, I see.
When it's flagged, it's like behind a mature icon, and he's like, I always have to click those, and I do too, man. You got to see what's.
How does that get flagged? Do you do it?
No, you hit
no. Someone, I didn't check mark it. Somebody that works for ArtStation came across my portfolio at some point, and they decided it was not cool.
Okay.
What are you doing, dude? Why are you trying to break ArtStation, dude?
My bad, dude. I think there's like a blurry nipple in there. It could be a shadow though.
Okay.
Gosh, Jason.
Here's another one. I always wonder how to approach self-awareness, having fun, to dealing with a tight briefing. Any solutions on your daily basis, average approach?
I think I know what he's saying. That might be more directed to you, AJ, but I think he's saying...
I know Andre. He's in my class actually right now. I think he was trying to see what your opinion was.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
He could just ask me in class tomorrow.
I think, for me, I think that's kind of the norm. Like, I think what he's kind of saying is like, how do you have fun when you have such a tight brief, you know? Because at least for me, anyways, I'll just go with that as my interpretation. And I get concepts, right? So I build them. And that's very different than some of the motivations that a concept artist would have, which is to kind of make something from whole cloth, like more loose, less rules, let's say. I just find fun and satisfaction in the manufacturing of things, like the crafting of things.
Yeah, you're like a modeler, like a model maker. Like
I'm a model. Yeah, exactly.
Like
I think, term. I think like my spirit is closer to a craftsman than it is, I don't know, a painter. I admire painters, and I've painted a thing or two, but it's not the same thing. I think of it like if it weren't for computers, like maybe I'd be trying to make great chairs or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I feel like you're like a cobbler, right? Like you're just in the
like
in the corner Making
If it was
shoes.
a different time, you'd be a
Yeah.
blacksmith.
Yeah, dude, blacksmith.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be rad.
Okay.
Yeah, so I find fun and satisfaction in that, in like actually making the final product and making sure that looks super clean and super finished. And then I kind of revel in people's enjoyment of that thing. Like if they have fun with it, or, you know, whatever the intended purpose of the thing I'm making, you know, I hope to find it, like see it through the end. So that's kind of what is my motivation.
Yeah, I think
Nice.
like the heart of the problem when it comes to becoming a concept artist is that I think to be a concept artist, you have to be that Jason was referring to earlier as like someone who's cutting from the cloth, right? Like building from the scratch, or from the start. It's not entirely, you know, someone's actually before you is usually the director or writer, whoever came up with the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yeah.
rarely is it like we have no idea, bro, just go, you know.
Mhm.
But it's like you said, less rules. I agree with this. Um, but I think the great irony that like I never thought about until you just talked about all this is that a concept artist also has to be a draftsman, right? Like in the beginning, we definitely can just do whatever, right? But ultimately, we have to pass it on,
Yeah.
and that part, because I think people's spirits who are like more in tune with concept, like I love to just draw cool ideas, man, all day, right? That same kind of like spirit animal doesn't want to also render that thing all day.
Absolutely
You know what
not.
I mean?
No, no way.
But they also have to have something that's a little more cohesive, and that's like the greatest conundrum for like a
Yeah.
concept artist. Where and this probably explains why there's more modelers, because at least you can like focus in like those people who are I want to like you know, make like craft a thing, you know, um I can do it now. You know, it's like a really good alignment of the planets. And this is why I find that concept artists who come from industrial design backgrounds or from like modeling backgrounds tend to be
Yeah.
the best concept artists.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because now they got both, right? Because they have the technician aspect of it mastered, because that's what they did like pretty much at the beginning of their career. But then, you know, maybe their spirit animal was like always to be a free bird concept artist, right? But
Mhm.
now they have like this like backbone of training and like real understanding of technical prowess, right? And now
Yeah.
they're like flirting with the whole how do I push my designs to be cool and interesting and fascinating and all this kind of cool stuff that's really fun. And then it just shines real good, real hard, dude. You know,
Real hard, dude.
real
Shiny.
real hard and shiny. And but I always tell my students, I always try to tell them like that, like if you can just have a refined concept, like you're gonna have a lot of value, because a lot of concepts need to be refined for all sorts of reasons. One, like maybe your modelers need that extra hand, right? Of like you defining those materials just a little bit, or having the orthographics clear, right? Or having some
Mhm.
thought of like what the modelers and animators are going to actually have to build, you know? That has a
Yeah.
lot of value. Um,
Absolutely.
Also, like outsourcing, like if your work's going to go to complete
Yeah, it's
randos,
huge.
yeah, like, and you can't go to their desk, like, or they can't come to your desk and be like, hey, like, it's like when me and Jason work together, like, he can easily just come over, like, hey, Jay, what the hell is that, like, black line mean? And I feel like it's like a strap. He's like, all right, cool, bro. And he'll just like walk over, right?
Yep.
And he can just work with that. He can just, all right, I know what a strap looks like. I can figure it out. But like if I'm like sending that to some person overseas who doesn't speak English or whatever, and I don't know who that person is because I don't handle outsourcing, you know, it's like I gotta actually paint that out in some cohesive manner. Otherwise, it's gonna come back garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna get what you send, and just to piggyback on that, that's a huge part of a lot of development or productions right now. And you know, another way of saying this is, if you're interested in being like a conceptual artist for a project like this, the more like well refined and having turns, and you know, the more like draftsman like designs you're doing that are really clean, your value goes up, because from a production standpoint, you don't need as many experienced modelers, and you don't need to spend more time going back and forth with outsourcing. So one really strong concert artist actually drops the cost of all this other production stuff, because you know, if you have modelers that aren't that experienced, but you give them a super tight concept where there's no room for interpretation or error, then you can just let them model to their heart's content. Like as long as everything is understood and clear.
Yeah,
So I think that's what makes them so much more valuable.
Yeah, I did a design for the Love, Death, and Robots, and
Oh, sick.
it's like almost exactly the thing that I drew, and it wasn't even like what I drew wasn't even that refined, but I understand the importance of refinement, and it was very clear that they understood that too. They understood what I was going for, right? And it's like Jason said, and I only worked on that design for like a week, I think maybe 2 weeks, you know. So from what Jason's saying, like from the production standpoint, they got like a real good deal. They're like, all right, good, we got it. Let's get out of here, you know?
And they're like, just make this.
And they just made it. It's like almost exactly once like I am allowed to like share whatever I did on it, you're gonna see it's like almost quite literally the same design. It's kind of crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously it was collaborative too. Like, I worked amongst them and we had feedback going back and forth. But that's kind of the point. Like it was like week's worth of like a week or a half or 2 weeks worth of going back and forth. They had what they wanted and then they just made it, you know?
Yeah.
And the only other studio where I felt like that happened was when I worked at Sony. That happened a lot. And then when I worked with Insomniac Games, like the Insomniac Games, like those guys know how to make video games, dude. Like love them or hate it, like whatever you feel about those games, like.
Well, Spider-Man was a huge hit. A lot of people love it, man.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, they just know how to make them. They just know how to make games, like, really good. Like, they have some sort of formula, and it just works. And, like, when I was working with them, it was like, I never had so much freedom, but also so much clarity. You know, like, they're like, this is what we think and go for it. And then I'll do it, and I'm like, great, just do this, this, and that, and then we're good. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I just did this, and that, and I'm like, all right, we're good. Let's move on. And I was like, whoa, dude, what? Sweet. And so it's kind of like, it was like the greatest, but it's going to the point of like, yeah, absolutely. You want to respect that as concept artists, just drawing cool images that are half finished is only good for so much. But if you can also like finish those designs at some capacity, like Jason said, and like I'm saying, it increases your value dramatically. And to get to the question, and we'll kind of move on to more. We'll go to the other questions. We'll lightning round it, so that way we can get out of here. But like, it's that like, as a concept artist, we like I said, like the spirit animal of people who want to be concept artists tends to lean in the more like floaty, like realm of just like kind of just make stuff and then just walk away, like
all
throw
new
paint
all
on
the
a canvas.
time,
Yeah, and then. But like it's not so helpful in the production environment as much. Some people can do it, and some people do get away with it. But it's to like Jason's point of like statistically speaking, it's very few studios, and a couple of those people that I'm thinking of, like the modelers I talked to who worked with these concept artists, had the hardest time, And so it's like, it's a good kind of thing to consider. Like you're a team player and you want to be part of the team, you got to like also be able to help contribute in meaningful ways, that you don't just sit there. Like for instance, like I'll just end this and I'll let you finish after Jason. When I worked on the cape for the High Templar, in the cinematic, the StarCraft cinematic, like I remember in the meeting, like everyone was like yelling at each other, like, "Oh, we're never gonna rig that. That's crazy!" And then my art director was like, "What? We're Blizzard. We're gonna make the greatest cape ever," And then they was going back and forth. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I could just draw another cape, dude. We'll just do a bunch of other capes. I can still make it cool, dude. Like I'll figure it out, But they were just like, it was like war between these guys. And then the director was just like, well, how long do we see the cape for? And then they looked at the animatic, and it was like half a second or something. It was like 2 seconds or something. They're like, yeah, we're not gonna design this anymore. Just make it a regular cape and let's move on. Let's let AJ spend his time on something actually valuable, And so, and then my art director was like, "Oh, okay, well, we're cool here." And then all the riggers were like, "Oh, thank God." Because my cape was crazy. Yeah, my cape was crazy. But like, my art director was a good art director. So he was fighting for like the beauty of like what makes Blizzard cinematic. Yeah, like he's like, this is why people want to work here kind of thing, right? He was like saying stuff like this.
Slamming his fist on the table.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really inspiring. But the modelers and animators were like, that's months of work just for a cape, and they're just like, they're freaking out. And But the director kind of like was a good director. Was like, well, like, what's the practicality of all this? Like, is it even like worth debating? You know, like if it's like a whole 30 seconds, we see the cape like flowing in the wind and all that stuff. Then maybe the director's like, all right, we got to like really do this then. You know,
Mhm.
but it wasn't. It was just like a quick like, and then it was all right. Yeah, let's just move on.
Just
And
make it a purple cape.
but like I always try to tell people the story because like my perspective as the concept artist was I'll just do whatever's needed. Need more capes, bros? I'll draw more capes. You know, because I get that I'm there to save money. You know, what I draw is going to save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, right? Because, for instance, think about that cape. Let's say we designed that cape. That's like literally like 6 to 7 different artists would have to work on that, and then 6 to 7 different technical artists would have to, create all that stuff, right? And if you add all those salaries up, that gets close to millions of dollars, And so it really is like something that needs to be recognized as an artist, is that we could potentially help the company save lots of money, if we're smart and we think about what's going on, what's going to the end product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, people like to work with you. They keep on wanting to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Secures your position for sure. It's really valuable.
And if the concepts are good, you're making the money.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
You're saving and making the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, go. What were you gonna say? I interrupted you. You're in the midst of saying something.
I'm not too sure. I will say, like, for me, the best concept I ever had, dude, was on Bloodhound for Apex. The art director did that as a kit bash model, so he wasn't like a 2D artist at all. But he did these like early on when they founded Respawn and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do and what became the Titanfall universe.
Mm-hmm.
He did these kit bashed conceptual figures like with G.I. Joe. They're like G.I. Joe size, you know what I mean? Like the big like 12-inch ones.
Cool.
And then he spray painted them all gray, you know what I mean? Oh my god, they looked so sick, dude. Like just matte gray. I don't know why, but they looked awesome. Everybody loved them. And those designs eventually made it into the games, a lot of them.
That's a cool idea, by the way.
Dude, makes me it's so sick.
Maybe we should like plan like a G.I. Joe kit bash day. We just go like the model shop, just buy a bunch of like G.I. Joe pieces.
Yeah, man. I wish I saw him do it. Because like
we could figure it out, dude.
We could probably figure it out. But I mean, he had the experience. With X-Acto, he would cut up these little like when you looked at it though, it looked like it was manufactured to look like that. And Bloodhound even has like a fur collar. There was this fur collar. I don't think I can show any pictures of it, but it was amazing. But it's kind of unfair, right? I'm not going to get a concept like that again. It just so happened that they were like, oh, we need to make a character, and it needs to be a Titanfall character. Here's this one that Joel made. And then we brought it in. It was sick, dude. And she had like a bow around her and like a rifle hanging. It just looked like the craziest character I've ever seen.
But it was like
oh my gosh.
It was like a physical thing, and you can turn it around, and that is.
So I took pictures and I just had it on my desk, and so I'm like modeling it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, But
that is pretty cool, actually.
But even though that's super rare, people like Hawkprey and what they do over at Epic is really similar in a way that they have there's a few badass console artists out there that do the models, like they do quick models. And I worked with a guy actually on Evolve who could do this. So they don't really get good at the whole like final asset version of a model because they don't care. They just get good at modeling super fast and like, Booleans or whatever it takes, Modo, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And they'll make a model that looks good from a primary form point of view, and then they'll like paint over it. And so essentially you get the tightest concept you've ever gotten because they send it to like a poor modeler who's like, and like now he has no creativity because it's like all right there. They're like, just replace this janky model with a good one and you have 2 months. They're like, oh shit. But that's an awesome way. I recommend to concept artists that at least ask me like what they can do. I'm like, yo, learn some modeling, incorporate modeling into what you're doing. Lighting, you get lighting, you get so many things. And at the end, if you did a model, you can pass that along to a modeler. It's just the better reference you're sending along, the more, something as a concept artist you should be excited about is you have kind of more effect on the final product. Your input, like you're affecting it more by providing so much good reference on your design. So I think
I'm gonna start slowly building up a portfolio of just real life assets.
Like, get out of my job, dude.
Yeah, real.
Get out of here.
And then
Get out of
just
here.
photogrammetry.
Nah,
them.
man. Dude, I like 1 hour of topology, dude, and you'd be like, nah, fuck that. Let's go draw some stuff.
Nah, I just use ZBrush, dude. I don't
Yeah,
care
see that you
about
can't do
stuff.
that, bro.
No, I can do whatever I want, man. I'll do
No.
whatever I want.
You know what though? I do think. Oh man, I'm gonna. You guys might the name of this, but there's an MMO right now that grew over the last few years, and now it's pretty big. But it's like in space, and these guys wear these suits that look like very organic.
Star Citizen.
Warframe. Boom.
Oh, Warframe.
Yeah, so Warframe I think is kind of genius because one of my students was super into that game and he asked how they were made. I hadn't really looked before. And I looked at them and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure those models are just Dynamesh. Yeah, they're just Dynamesh. They're just sculpting in ZBrush, organically.
Mhm.
And then I think they're just automatically retopoed and baked. And dude, like gamers love them, and they found a style that works for that method. And I think they could make a character in a day, maybe two.
I think they refined that process now that they have money, but I think in the beginning
okay.
you're right. I think you're right.
I probably looked at some old shit, but
the newest stuff is
impressed.
Definitely super good. And but you're absolutely right. Like when I remember seeing the first ones too, I was thinking, yeah, that's how you do it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to indie dev life, dude. I don't have time to.
Yeah, AAA is a crazy business, and there's way more things out there than that.
All right, so we're gonna go to the questions in the chat now. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm gonna write into the chat, ask questions, and then I'm gonna write into the chat no more questions. And after that, if you have a question, sorry, man, I'm gonna cut you off from there. So go ahead, ask some questions.
I think we already have quite a bit of questions.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we can squeeze in. We'll just kind of lightning around the last series of them.
Okay.
We'll spend the next 15-20 minutes just answering questions. I'll try to talk less. I know me myself can talk like 15 minutes answering one question. I'll let Jason try to take most of these, unless it's directed to me.
Okay, here we go. Do you think it's more helpful if you have time to draw every day for 6 to 8 hours, or do 2-hour sessions every day and do other stuff?
Yeah, I can actually answer this question quickly. I'll try not to get too into it. I'm a big fan of spending a few hours a day doing the thing that you want to get good at rather than looking for that long stretch of time, because that long stretch of time could easily be interrupted. Where if you like work 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night, or 1 hour like at lunch and 1 hour at night, or 2 hours at lunch every day, whatever you do, but it's like consistent, then you'll benefit from that in the long run. It's kind of like what Jason was saying earlier. Remember when you were saying like when you go day by day, you can't really see it, but in the long run, it all adds up. And it's very linear. That's how I learned programming in like 2 years. I was just like programming every day for like 2 hours, and then I got pretty good at it. Now I'm like trying to learn math. You know what a dot product is, Jason?
No.
Me neither, dude. I'm trying to figure that shit out. I'm trying to figure that out, man. It's a great way to like understand like the radius of like a AI's perception or like a player's perception. It's pretty dope. It's crazy, man. Math,
yeah. My dad's a math teacher, although not that kind of math.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what that math is. I think it might be trigonometry. Deals with angles and stuff. Anyways, next question.
I got another one. Hey AJ, what are some of the ways to stay disciplined to put in the hours every day to study and practice?
Oh, I think
4 to 5 hours without feeling burned out.
Yeah, I think I just kind of answered that. Yeah, it's just the consistency. Yeah, maybe I'll do a stream or like maybe like a whole video on like this problem and answer it in a deeper way. But yeah, the discipline part, like the part of discipline is just it's discipline. Like there's no it's really hard to teach people how to be disciplined. You know what I mean? Like it really is a self-motivated thing. I can't.
I mean, I think it's also just important to drive the point home that 2 or 3 hours a day, like at least 5 or 6 days a week, is what you need. Like, I mean, 3 hours a day is all you need. And like, so when people think, I think sometimes people think, you know what I'm going to do is, oh, I'm so busy, but this Saturday, I'm just going to sit down for 10 hours. I'm going to grind it out. And they keep putting this thing in the future, and they try to do this one big ass session. But if you just, like you were saying, make a regular schedule, wake up earlier, I think is what works for me. Just wake up a couple hours earlier and start your day with whatever you're trying to do. And then just like working out, dude, like you just do a couple hours a day, and if you stay consistent, and you're gonna get better in the long run. There's just not like you can't just like down it, you know. You
Yeah,
can't just like
yeah, that's great, and we can use ourselves as an example of this. We were talking about like when we were in school. We were amongst the people who were going in every day. It wasn't like nobody else was not invited. Like everybody was, of course, invited to come hang out with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there were people that would be invited, but they'd be playing Minecraft all day, dude.
or Street Fighter. Kalen, you listening, dude?
Yeah.
Called him out.
He grew out of that.
Nah,
But
he grew out of it.
Yeah, he. I don't know if you've heard.
We
of
were
this.
worried about him though, but he did it.
There's a talks he does, and he talks about that time where he talks specifically how me, Edgar, I think it was Mio, my buddy Mio, we all went and to High Moon Studios because we were like the best of our class. And Kalen's like, all right, cool. When are we going? And like Linda, our counselor at the time, she was like, what? You're not going? And he's like, what? Why not? And he's like, what do you mean, why not? You're not good. Like straight up, like to his face. And he got real salty about that. But eventually he realized like she was right,
Oh yeah.
Like why would he just all of a sudden just get to go to this like studio where like me, Edgar, and our other friends were like working our asses off, And so it was very clear that we were the ones that would do it every day. Like we would always do it, And so yes, I think I'll make a whole video on this, but Jason and I are in agreement with this. That's the inside joke that all people who do really well is that we didn't do anything different. We just kept persistent. That's really it.
All right. Another one says, yo, Anthony, did you ever see the graffiti piece I did with some of your robot characters?
No. Can you send it to me in, I don't know, like send it to me through ArtStation. Send me an ArtStation message. I'll check right after.
All right. Let's see. Next one.
I'm excited. Don't go to jail.
Oh, really? I thought it might have been it just looked like graffiti. If it's real graffiti, that's dope.
I've seen it. It's real graffiti.
Oh, sick.
I
have some people that have tattoos too, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, if this is what I think it is, they emailed in, and I tried to tell you to look at it.
Yeah, my bad, dude. Yeah, email is pretty like half and half, and so is ArtStation. In fact, all my platforms. But like you
get a lot of messages.
Yeah, I'll check. All
right,
right
next
after.
one.
Or you can just send it to me in our messenger. Or like in the Discord, I'll take a look at it.
Hey Anthony, would you ever work on a graphic novel or video game? Your art is stunning.
I'm doing both. Next.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing both. You know the beauty, while you're looking for the next question, the beauty of like all this stuff. Like I feel really confident that I can make my own games, right? Only because I learned programming, right? Because all of the other parts that I'm not that great at, like I have friends for that. I have friends I can talk to that can give me good advice or give me insight or feedback. You know what I mean? It's really cool, man. And I know that that's a luxury that most people don't have. And I tell people like that's why you should just always make friends. Always make good friends with people. They'll help you. And so yeah,
Okay.
Even with graphic novel stuff, like someone literally emailed, was like, I'm gonna help you with your graphic novel, and he's like a really good like Incus. He's like one of the better ones out there, and he's like, whatever you need, bro, I'll help you out. And I was like, what the?
Nice.
It's so nice, man. Yeah.
Okay. Hey Anthony.
They're all for me, dude.
I-
Maybe you should look for some more general ones.
Enjoy, dude.
Yeah. And then maybe some that Jason could try to answer.
Let me finish this one so we don't cut him off.
Okay.
They said, I recently broke my wrist and shoulder and am unable to draw for a couple months, which is eating me alive. Any tips for things to do to keep me improving without being able to create?
Yeah, you could try to draw with the other limb, if that's possible. If not, you can do what Kim Jong-ji did. Like, he had to join the military as part of the Korean service. And so he couldn't draw for, like, literally for 2 years. And so he would just observe and constantly, like, mentally draw stuff. And that seems like a weird thing, like, to mentally draw. Like, like, how does that work? Like, no, you totally can, man. Like, it's totally a thing. I do it from time to time. I'm actually been trying to practice that. Like that painting of the tongue with like the feet coming out of it. That was one of those. Like, I painted it in my mind, and then I just painted it, and it worked out. It looked exactly as I envisioned it in my mind. Minus a couple of details. Yeah, I was just like, I wonder if I could paint in my mind, and then I painted it in my mind, and then I went to the tablet and painted it. Yeah, whatever, dude.
Just mind painting, dude. Whatever.
Well, like, I didn't like paint it, and then it just came to me.
Not wrong.
It's like I thought about what it was going to look like.
All this time, dude, I didn't know you were a fucking wizard, dude. You don't tell me?
No, dude, it's not
we're
that.
gonna have
It's
to have a
not that
talk after
crazy.
this.
It's not
Damn,
that
dude.
crazy, dude.
All right, here we go. I got another one. This one Jason should be able to answer.
Whenever you're painting, whenever you're doing concept art and never touching 3D.
This one Jason should answer. Hey, Anthony, can you?
Yeah, when you're a Black Korean in this industry, Jason, what are your thoughts?
I can use my imagination.
Dude, just answer it with your mind.
Yeah, I answered it with my mind, so enjoy.
Oh, okay. Who do you recommend for YouTubers to learn from as a concept artist? You guys should know some YouTubers. Also, you should check out Jason Hill's YouTube.
Yeah, actually, we should plug Jason's. Like, what's your YouTube? It's just Jay Hill, right?
Yeah, you could just search Jay Hill. I think it'll come up.
But there's like there's some like other Jay Hills. There's like some ladies.
You'll see you'll see like a black and white picture of my face.
Or just some.
I think I have the permission to add links. So let me see if I can get a link for you guys.
Yeah, we
cool, yeah.
But what was the question again? Like, what's good YouTubers?
Yeah, just shout out some YouTubers you guys like that are doing.
Yeah,
art.
That are doing art.
Yeah, what about?
Yeah, let's just make it art.
Go ahead. I'm gonna try to think. I definitely know some. I mean, Mark Burnett is pretty big.
I would agree.
He was consistent for. I think he's getting back on it.
There's a lot. I mean, honestly, and maybe you can expand on this, Jason. I'll get it started and I'll pass you the ball. It's like there's a lot, but it's kind of like it's all scattered, right? Like all this information is scattered from all sorts of different users, YouTubers. So it's not a matter of like finding that one that's pretty cool. It's like just keep going, and then just what I would do is categorize and catalog the YouTube videos that you liked or you felt like you got some information out of, and something that you might want to come back to watch later when it's relevant, you know. But like, because if you were to ask me like that question about like game dev, for instance, I wouldn't be able to think of too many like off the top of my head, because I just have tons of videos that are just everywhere from all sorts of people, you know. And so for me, it's like, Mark Burnett is great, sure, like absolutely. Like I like Ross Tran stuff, you know.
Yeah, he's a big YouTuber.
But that's like different thing. That's a different thing that you would get from Ross than you would get from Mark.
Yeah.
There was the Modern Day James guy, which by the way, I'm gonna meet up with them and we're gonna try to get him on here too. He's gonna hang out.
Cool.
Adam Duff, like we had him like just last time. He's cool. He's a cool guy. But like that's what I'm saying, like just keep going. Then there's Bobby, there's Fang, you know, there's like all sorts of people.
Oh yeah, Fang Zhu is sick, dude. I used to love. If you're not that person that asked the question, should check out Fang Zhu, man. He put up a lot of gold on there for a long time.
What about you? But I also like, it's not just concept. I look at 3D stuff too, man. I look at like all sorts of like flip normals. I love flip normals. Like,
Flip normals has been crushing out the content recently. I think they're relatively new and they're good with the content. There's another guy named Blender Guru who's been doing
I was
Blender
about to say
for a long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like who else do you think is pretty dope that you think people don't know about? Like what's one of your favorite sculptors? Maybe not you.
Favorite sculptor? Oh man, I mean like you might have even been referencing him earlier, but Geo Napkill and
dude,
sick.
Good old Geo, bro.
Crushing the forums, dude, and Chris Costa is a legend.
Oof, I love me some Costa. My Costa. Yeah, it's funny because I disagree with him almost on every little thing he talks about. Yeah, politically we're like aligned, like on the polar opposite, man. It's funny, but like it's always only online and it's always very cordial. But it's just funny because we have a mutual respect for the art, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. I
like
think a lot
that.
of relationships in our world are kind of built on that, where we wouldn't be friends otherwise, which is kind of cool.
It is great. It's really cool. Yeah, Chris is great, man. I think he's one of the best ones. He's like one of the
Mhm.
OG ZBrushers too, man.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, I got
Next
another one.
question.
Is there a way to get a tour of Respawn?
Not
Kind of
that I
good
know.
question. If you know anyone that works there, I don't work there anymore, but if you do,
Oh, really?
yeah, if you do know someone that works there, you can hit them up and then they can invite you. And you just go into the lobby and you sign a little NDA on an iPad and you can walk around.
I think I know somebody that works there. I don't know if you were there when he was there. Jung Park.
Yeah, I know Jung. Jung
Yeah.
Money. That's what we called him.
Yeah.
Red Engine, right?
Yeah, I used to make. Well, no, we worked at Sony together, and
Oh, cool.
then he
Yeah,
started
yeah.
a school. Then he made me one of the teachers there. Yeah, it's
Nice. A lot of people at Respawn were from
funny.
Sony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because like it was him and Steve, and I used to make fun of them that they weren't real Koreans because they didn't know how to play piano, didn't know Taekwondo, and then they didn't play
StarCraft?
They didn't play
Oh,
StarCraft.
wow.
Yeah, I was like, you guys aren't real. There's
Dude,
not.
the trifecta.
Yeah, you guys aren't like you got to at least do one of them. Like, okay,
It's
I get
crazy,
like if you
dude.
can't do all of them.
It's crazy because he speaks Korean, so you'd think he would play StarCraft.
That's just default, right? That's like
Yeah, it's default.
that's a racial passive of the Korean
Yeah,
people.
I thought you learned those two things.
Oh yeah,
That's cool.
and they don't
It's like
smoke.
a rite of passage.
Yeah, they don't smoke either. That's like a Korean thing too. Koreans smoke like
Yeah,
crazy.
Korean smoke. Yeah.
Like smoke like when I lived in Korea, man, it was just like a constant.
Like
haze of
like
just
smoked
smoke.
meats.
No, just
No,
smoke
it's
cigarettes,
cigarettes.
bro. Smoke just cigarettes, dude. It's all day, every day.
Oh, really? Damn,
It
dude.
was bad. Yeah, I think they
All
cracked
right.
down on it because it was getting out of control.
Do we need a college degree for getting a job in game industry?
Nope,
Nope.
Simple.
it's just
Simple.
true.
Just get
I
good.
agree.
Get good.
When you're doing pieces like these, do you have a rule of thumb messing in all of these colors without them looking muddy?
Oh yeah, values. The values are dope. You gotta make the values good. Watch, I'll show you. So I'll knock the values back. You guys won't be able to see it, but see, bam, values.
I'll just go to YouTube right now, dude.
No, actually, I'll just send it to you. I don't know if you've been seeing what I was painting. Well, ring that bell, dude. Get that bell.
No, I'm looking at it right now, dude. Look at that. See, I can internet, dude.
Yeah,
I can
here,
internet.
I'll send you the black and white footage in the general chat. But
Oh
like,
yeah, some other person in here listed Ahmed Al Dori. He's
Oh yeah,
good.
he's good.
Yeah, he's
yeah.
good.
yeah. So you'll notice that when I just change the values, like check it out. Now I can like change the color, and it'll still be all right because the values are good. So the rule of thumb is make sure your values are pretty strong. And then the colors, you can just do something like just basic stuff like contemporary, or not contemporary, complementary, compound. What else is there? Analogous. That's pretty much it. There's like triad, I guess. Yeah, I guess. But like you can just literally just Google like color theory, and it'll just give you like all 5 of them. There's not that many. And then you can just kind of follow those. It's really not hard to memorize them either.
I'm gonna try to find questions that are more suited to Jason can answer.
Yeah,
So,
don't get me wrong. I would love to answer all these other questions, but like Jason's our special guest. You know, I want to make sure
Yeah,
that
so
people can take some
if
advantage.
your question gets skipped, it's not because I hate you.
It's
That's not
definitely
what you-
because
that's
Michael
not what
hates
you-
you.
Yeah, you did. That's not what you just typed in the private chat, man. I'm reading it right here. It says,
Fuck, dude, that was for us.
"Oh,
That was for
damn, dude, I knew
That
it."
was for us.
Ah.
Okay. How do you encourage people to give you more critical feedback? How can I present myself in a way that makes others feel comfortable giving criticism?
Cool. I like that he asked this question because I actually wanted to piggyback off something you said earlier, AJ, when we were talking. And
Another correction.
yeah, no, just no, an amendment. You were saying you were saying something about getting critiques, and you were saying like comparing yourself to really good people and trying to be, brutally honest with yourself, which is good. So I also though have a small group of people, like less than 5, like between 2 and 4 people, that I'll occasionally reach out to them when I'm working on stuff. and because I want a like a true criticism. Like I know that like we know each other well, we're comfortable with each other, and I know that they'll tell me the truth no matter what. And so I respect their opinions a lot too, just as creatives, and just I know that the kind of feedback they would give me would be beneficial, because if you show just a normal friend or a family member, if you show a family member, dude, they're gonna be like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
family
god, you
members.
made that!
Oh, my
Wow!"
darling little angel.
Yeah, and like if you just show a random person off the street, they'd be like, "Damn, dude, what'd you do? You drew that on a computer, or
You
whatever."
drew that on a computer
By hand?
Damn, yeah.
with your hands. Yeah, that's great.
If you throw it on Instagram, just people just throw up like fire emojis, it doesn't help. So I before I post stuff, like just while I'm working, I'll private message people and I'll say, "Hey man, what do you think about this?" And I also try to not prompt people. I'll give them a little preface for some context, or I'll just drop it in there and be like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Just because I want to see their true reaction, as if they just came across an image on the internet, and then I want them to tell me what they think. And then that's the most valuable feedback I get, is from those just a couple of people.
That's actually pretty
Solid.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need that. So you're saying you work with the Illuminati? Got it. Next.
Yeah. I mean, no.
Oh, got him.
It's too late. Next one says, what type of job in the video game industry would be smart to work towards for the next 3 to 5 years? From no in terms of demand. From now in terms of demand?
Yeah.
I think from now maybe it makes
And it says study. Did it
From
say
no.
specifically study on your own?
No, it just says work towards. Like if they had something to work towards in the next 3 to 5
Okay.
years.
Yeah, that goes back to the premise that I made earlier of like, don't worry about getting a job, right? Like, because it seems like that question is the kind of question that's like, how do I get a job, right? Yeah, because if I tell you like technical artist, are you gonna go be a technical artist now? Because that's the real answer.
Okay, that's
You know what I mean?
good. Yeah.
Like technical artists are, even to this day, are like one of the most demanded
Yeah.
careers in our industry. Someone who can both speak programming and art.
Tools programmers and
dude, totally.
network programmers and visual effects artists are all highly sought after because they're rare. But you bring up a really good point, and something I was thinking about too. When people reach out with questions to me, I think I lucked out in that my motivation wasn't money. I think like really early on, my dad told me even like to not worry about money and to do, follow your interests. And if you get good enough,
dope dad and dope teachers in your life.
I do.
Nice.
I did. I really lucked out. And he was just like a humble high school teacher. So I never had any big like aspirations. And he told me, just focus on what you're interested in. If you get good enough, money will come. And I think sometimes I do get a question that essentially, instead of like, my goal was to get better at something. Right. And then the career thing was just going to kind of manifest itself. You just got to be open to that. But I think like what you're pointing out is, if you're job oriented, like if you're career oriented, I don't know if that's going to be enough to sustain you, because we're talking about like a lifetime. Like I know that I would be doing kind of what I'm doing no matter what. And if you can, and it's kind of easier for me to say, I know people that just don't know like a specific interest they have. But if you do have an interest, like if you could if you can imagine yourself doing something for most of the day, every day, like for your whole life, and it doesn't make you feel like you want to quit, then I think you should try to just get good at that, and eventually, an opportunity might present itself.
Let me ask you, Jason,
Mm-hmm.
like you probably agree with me on this, like, or you may know what I'm talking about, but like we have peers, like our contemporaries, who are actually these people who started off getting like a job, and then they got that job and they're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, do you know people of this? Because I do. I know plenty of people, and I'm always just like, oh man.
Yeah, I don't know plenty. I don't think. I mean, I'm trying to think. I know some.
Yeah, you don't have to throw them under the bus. Just a
no, dude. This guy Brian. Oh my. No, I'm just kidding. I just made that up. No, but no, I definitely know some people, and there are some people in the industry, and sometimes they have other jobs. I haven't met too many character artists. I don't know what it is about that, but mostly character artists have wanted to do that for a long time.
Yeah, I think
but other ones though, like maybe a prop artist can feel like it's just a job, And I don't know what happened in college. Like I just didn't want something I think about now that I have students because they want to study character art. And I think there is just something primal, the fact that characters in stories are what we're drawn to and what we feel empathy towards and what kind of represent our place in the universe. I think there's just an urge to work on those. And so they end up being, the farther point for some reason, just I guess for that reason. So they seem like they're more important, just like actors get paid the most in movies, even though they might not do all the skillful work. It's that they're on the screen and that we're like, oh, they're so important. And so I think a lot of prop modelers and a lot of prop modelers could have just like essentially just gotten off the train track at a certain point. And they're like, oh, I can just take this job. And, depending on your project, it could just be like you're doing rubble and cardboard boxes or whatever for, years. And if you don't enjoy that, if you wouldn't be doing that on your own, then that might feel more like a job.
Yeah, man. All right. How many more questions do we got?
If I had to guess from scanning, maybe like 6.
Oh man! All right, try to see if you can grab
Soul Crush. I heard your Soul Crush right there.
No.
Oh man, dude.
No, you never wrote in there to stop.
Yeah, I never did. You're right.
Like,
I was getting right in there. Yeah, no. Like all
right. You want to do we'll just do a minute per right now. It's 6 minutes. We'll crush it right now.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, guys. No more questions here on after. I'll write it. No more questions.
Getting out.
Thanks.
Kiddos need to bounce. All right,
Damn it,
go ahead.
I'm a student from Art Center, but I'm feeling extremely burnt out from school. I was planning on taking a month off from drawing after term, or is that not a good idea?
That's not a good idea, no. You should definitely take a break. Like, you shouldn't be drawing like 12 hours a day, but you should still be drawing. You should still work on something. But like maybe do the thing we said earlier, like a few hours out of the day. And most of your day is hanging out and doing real life stuff. Go.
Okay. What is the hardest challenges of your careers? How about when you were entering the industry?
Go, Jason. I'll let you answer this one, and then I'll answer after.
It was a challenge for me to get into the industry. After I graduated, I thought I was like the best in my class, and I was like a little too confident. I was like, man, this is gonna be easy. And it ended up being like at least 6 months. So I think just staying persistent, working at home on my craft and applying to places and essentially being more and more open to like studios you'd never heard of, all that stuff, open to moving.
Yeah, humbling
yourself.
Yeah,
just not giving up. And because it was hard to not just play Call of Duty all day and drink with my friends, I just wanted to like keep going. And eventually, once I broke in and I had a little bit more clout, it got easier and easier from there.
The hardest part was when my first layoff that I had been through, and I was scrambling to get another job. That was pretty hard because I pretty much had nowhere to go and I needed somewhere to go. It was right when I was about to move in with my wife. Back then we were just dating, and she had a kid, and so it's like we were just about to move in. I didn't have the money to pay for that, and so I was scrambling. But it worked out. But that was pretty hard. It was rough.
Okay. How do you convince family and parents to study concept art from home?
Yeah, so if you have like, I don't think Jason can really talk to this because it seems like everyone in his life supported.
Yeah, dude.
What are you talking about? People don't support you. That's weird. Yeah. Yeah, I do understand what that's like. But the advice I usually give to people is like, try not to assume, right? So don't just assume that they know what you're about, right? You have to teach them what the industry is about. You got to teach them how much money can be made from it, the kinds of jobs that exist, the people who do those jobs, show them the work, how to get there, educate them, and show them that there is a real path there. I can give you some help on that. Just go to some of the bigger movies, like the Marvel movies. Look at like Ryan Meinerding, take all of his work and buy the art books and just point at his work. And this guy is the job that I want to do, you know. And he entry level for concept artists is somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000 a year, entry level these days. But I've seen it get up to upwards of $150,000 to $250,000 a year as just a concept artist. Both for games and movies. You make more money in the movie industry, but but definitely it can get up there. You know what I mean? And so when you tell your parents this type of stuff and you show them, don't just like explain it to them, like show them the path and how it's done, then maybe they'll be a little bit more receptive to it. But if you're just like, I want to draw for a living, yeah, you got to think of it from their vantage point. Like, what? It's almost as like saying I just want to play video games for a living. It's even though today that's becoming
Except
more,
Ninja makes $1 million.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
but even I would say even in that regard, you would have to show them. Like my son
Yeah.
said that to me, and I was like, all right, well then you have to be better than me at the same games. I'm better than you at these games, and I play
Yeah.
leisurely, dude. You know, it'd be one thing if you're like freaking master class of this stuff, but you're not. Like you're not even platinum, bro. Like you know, and so it's
Call me when you're platinum.
yeah, like no, I was like, wait, tell me when you're masters, dude. Then I'll like we'll take this real serious. But you see what I'm saying? But like he had the disadvantage of his dad knows what's up, you know?
Yeah.
I will be more than happy to support him in the video game venture. But it's like these kids play 16 hours a day. They like really are training, you know?
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like apps you can use to improve your aim.
There's
and
coaches,
shit.
dude. There's coaches that teach
Yeah.
people how to play
Oh, yeah.
Fortnite.
Big business.
So anyway,
All right,
my
let's
point
keep
is
going.
that yeah, you just need to educate them. Yeah.
Yeah, the art of books is a great idea. Okay, are you worried about your coloring affecting your values?
No.
Okay. What are some of the best books that you
I
can
know there's
use
a
to
deeper
learn
answer there,
to draw?
but we don't have time. It's another stream, I'll do it.
Oh, if you're still in here, Convict too. There's a question I can answer for him if we got time at the end.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that one.
Oh, cool.
There's two more. It's this one and that one.
Yep.
So what are the best books that you can use to learn to draw anatomy?
There's a lot, man. But
Yeah, there's a
my favorite one was Anatomy for the Artist, Bridgman, anything about Bridgman, Andrew Loomis.
Loomis.
John
Michael Hampton.
Watkiss has an anatomy book. It's actually super rare, but that was pretty good. And I like to just look at comic book artists. They pretty much just draw dynamic anatomy in really aesthetic ways in all sorts of positions. So comic book, like especially like if you look at like the heroes like Batman and Superman, they're pretty much just naked, you know.
Yep.
That's great. And you know, like even other like characters like Wonder Woman and like that. Again, she's pretty much naked, right? And so you just get these really aesthetic, appealing, like form fitting, like anatomy. It's really good. And plus, like Pinterest is out there and has lots of great images.
My
Kevin
favorite
Chan.
book is Anatomy for Sculptors. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that one's a
someone
good
who
one.
draws. I'm sure someone who draws would like it too. It's a great book.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, that one's solid. I've looked at that one. Okay, here's that question. Have you ever worked in Keyshot? Would you recommend it if you have? What 3D program do you think are necessary or at least are really useful from your perspective?
Cool. So yes, I've used Keyshot. I've used it a few times. I definitely would recommend it if you use ZBrush. I think if you use ZBrush, it's well worth the money because you have to get this other app or license called the Bridge, which lets you move all of your whole ZBrush scene into Keyshot without exporting files, which is like extremely important actually, because if you're trying to render something that was millions of polygons in Maya, you'd have to go through a process that would take hours or days essentially. But because Keyshot and ZBrush talk to each other, you can just send your model over to Keyshot, and it's a really good iRay renderer that does like ray trace stuff that looks great. So pretty much all of my high polys on my ArtStation in my portfolio are rendered in Keyshot, and it's kind of it's like my go-to if I'm not just going to quickly render something in ZBrush. I'll render it in Keyshot. So yeah, if you use ZBrush, yeah, it's super good. And what 3D programs do you think are necessary? I would say it depends on your goal, but I mean, if you're interested in characters, ZBrush is a must. I know that like some people use Mudbox, some people talk about Blender sculpting, but ZBrush is still the industry standard, and I would still recommend that over anything for the time being. And also, Maya is the most popular 3D software package right now professionally. But if you're a student starting out with no money, I mean, Blender is free and the Unreal Engine is free. So you can make models. And I think actually Blender has a sick ray trace renderer and a real-time renderer. So you could learn a lot of the fundamentals in Blender right now. And there's a full feature-length movie on Netflix that was made entirely in Blender. So, it's a brave new world out there. But as it is right now, Maya is still the most popular full-fledged package, and ZBrush is the standard for organic modeling.
All right. That's it. We're going to get out of here.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Jason,
Yeah,
it was a pleasure.
thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. We should do it again. Let's see if I can try to get a couple of our guy buddies and we'll all hang out.
Nice.
Just chat. Maybe try
Very
to
fun.
figure out some way of like doing multi-stream, seeing what everyone else is doing. That'd be cool.
Yeah, multi-stream would be cool. I want to try that.
Yeah. But anyway, peace out, friends. Thanks, Mike, for moderating. And then
man.
laters, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.
See ya.